I caught her red-handed in our bedroom. She was making love to another man, completely unaware that I was watching them. My beloved wife had mocked me our entire married life, thinking that her prenuptial agreement would guarantee her an easy, carefree future. But I loved another woman, and I decided to use her betrayal to my advantage. All I needed was a photo of her with another man to secure $2 million and ensure myself a worry-free retirement. If you're watching this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel and leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. I used to believe I had my life figured out. I had a good job, a solid income, and by the time I hit 38, I'd saved up more than most people my age. I'd built myself from the ground up. Every cent, every promotion, every step forward was earned by grinding harder than anyone else I knew. By the time I met Melissa, I had almost $2 million in savings and a beautiful house on the edge of the city. She came into my life like a storm. At first, she was charming, spontaneous, and full of life. She made me feel like the luckiest man alive. And stupid me, I fell for it. Hard. 3 months into dating, she brought up the idea of marriage. I hesitated. I'd always been cautious when it came to relationships, especially after watching my dad lose everything in his divorce. That's when she suggested a marriage contract. Just a formality, she said sweetly, stroking my arm. You keep what's yours, I keep what's mine. Simple. I thought she was being reasonable. What I didn't realize was that Melissa never did anything that wasn't calculated. Buried deep in that contract was a clause I should have paid more attention to. If we divorce for any reason other than infidelity, all assets, including premarital ones, are split 50-50. I signed it anyway. I was in love, or maybe just blind. Fast forward 4 years. The woman I married is gone. Melissa spends money like she's allergic to saving, treats me like an ATM, and worse, she humiliates me whenever she gets the chance. Take last summer, for example. We were at a barbecue with friends. Everyone was laughing, drinking, having a good time. Out of nowhere, Melissa loudly announced, "Oh, don't ask him to grill. Last time he nearly burned the steaks. My poor hero can't even handle a spatula." Everyone laughed. Hard. I laughed too, pretending it didn't sting, but inside I was dying. It wasn't just a joke. It was the look she gave me, that smug, satisfied smirk, like she enjoyed tearing me down in front of people. I told myself it was just a one-time thing. But then came my mother's birthday. Melissa decided to throw a small dinner party at our house. My mom was there, beaming, wearing her favorite blue dress. Halfway through dinner, Melissa leaned across the table and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe next year we should celebrate at a nursing home, huh? You know, where your mom belongs." The table went silent. My mom's smile faded, and I swear I felt something inside me snap. That was the night I stopped loving her. Underscore 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 underscore. I started dreading going home. I'd sit in my car in the driveway after work, staring at the front door, fighting the urge to just drive off somewhere, anywhere, and never come back. And then I met Anabel. It was a Tuesday evening. I stopped by the supermarket on my way home, half zombie from another soul-crushing day at work. I was reaching for a jar of pasta sauce when I heard a soft voice next to me. "Excuse me, can you grab that for me? Top shelf. I'm a little short." I turned and saw her, Anabel. She wasn't dressed up, just jeans and a simple white blouse, but there was something about her that stopped me cold. Her brown hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and her eyes. God, those eyes. Warm. Kind. The kind of kind you don't see much anymore. I handed her the jar, and she smiled like I'd just rescued her. "Thanks," she said. My twins would have staged a riot if I came home without this. Twins? I asked before I could stop myself. She laughed, this soft, melodic sound I hadn't heard in years. Yeah. 2 7-year-old tornadoes named Lily and Lila. Single mom life. We stood there talking for almost 20 minutes, right in the middle of aisle 6, like we'd known each other forever. By the time we said goodbye, we'd exchanged numbers. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, scrolling through our text thread, rereading every word. She wasn't just beautiful, she was real. No games. No manipulation. No cruel jokes designed to crush me. And I hated myself for how badly I wanted to see her again. Because there was Melissa, and the marriage contract. If I filed for divorce, Melissa would take half of everything. Half of the $2 million I worked my entire life for. Half of the house I bought years before I even met her. And the worst part? She knew it. She'd smirk every time we argued and say, "Go ahead, leave. I'll take my half and redecorate my half of the house." I felt trapped. Until one day, I walked into a lawyer's office just to see if there was any way out. That's when I learned about the loophole. If one of you cheats, the lawyer explained, tapping the contract, the other gets everything. No split. No debate. No mercy. And just like that, the rules changed. I started noticing things. Melissa was spending more time at the gym. She started guarding her phone like it held nuclear codes. Then one afternoon, I came home early from work, and the bedroom reeked of men's cologne. That was the moment I knew. The moment I smelled the cologne, a chill ran through me. It wasn't the first time I noticed hints that Melissa was hiding something. The extra trips out, whispered phone calls, sudden wardrobe changes. But this was tangible. This was proof in the air, and I wasn't going to ignore it. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, staring at the perfume bottle she'd left carelessly on the nightstand. The label was smudged, indistinct, but I didn't need a name. I knew this wasn't mine. I knew it wasn't hers. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that someone else had been there. That night I barely slept. I replayed every humiliating moment Melissa had subjected me to, the barbecue, my mother's birthday, the constant jabs at friends and colleagues. The rage simmered beneath my skin, but it was tempered by fear. Fear of losing everything I had earned if I acted rashly. By morning I had a plan. I couldn't confront her directly. I couldn't risk leaving the house and triggering the contract clause that would bleed me dry. I needed evidence. I found a private detective online, a man named Lucas Hayden, who specialized in marital investigations. His first words over the phone sounded like a mantra I needed to hear. If you want proof, you get proof. Nothing else matters. Within 48 hours, Lucas was parked outside our home in a black SUV, watching Melissa's every move. I stayed away, pretending to be at work, though my stomach knotted every time I thought about her walking around the house with another man in the rooms I'd thought were safe. The first few days were nerve-wracking. Melissa left for yoga, twice, claiming she needed the alone time to decompress. Lucas reported back via text, nothing. She had done nothing unusual. I cursed my nerves, wondering if I was imagining it all. Then came the Friday evening. I had left work early, hoping to surprise her with an unannounced visit, but only to catch a whiff of that unmistakable cologne. I called Lucas immediately. "She's not alone," I whispered, my fingers shaking over the phone. The detective didn't need more explanation. Within an hour, he had photos of Melissa with a man I didn't know, sneaking into the house. They were inside our bedroom, laughing, careless, intimate. The images made my blood boil. Not just anger, a cold, precise fury. Every humiliating joke she'd ever made at my expense, every manipulation, every dime she'd spent without my consent, it all surged back in one wave. But the contract. I reminded myself of the contract. I couldn't touch her directly. I had to move carefully. Lucas suggested surveillance cameras inside the house, discreet, recording every moment. And then he did something clever. he traced the man. Turns out, he wasn't a client, a neighbor, or anyone she claimed to know casually. He was someone she had met through an app, someone who probably didn't care about the $2 million, but cared enough to be her accomplice in breaking me down. During this time, I started texting Anabel cautiously. I didn't want to rush things, didn't want her to think I was desperate or reckless. We exchanged small conversations about her twins' school, the mundane struggles of single motherhood. But her messages were the only light in my day, the only part of life that reminded me there was a world beyond Melissa. I wanted to ask her out badly. But the lawyer's words rang in my ears: if you step wrong, you risk everything. So I waited. 2 weeks into surveillance, Lucas called me. His voice was quiet, steady, but there was an edge of triumph I couldn't miss. "I've got it," he said. "Everything you need. The evidence is enough for the court to terminate the marriage contract in your favor. She's done." My pulse raced. My mind was a blur of strategy, desire, and fear. I couldn't believe it. All the suffering, all the humiliation, all the endless months of misery were finally leading to a possible escape. The next steps were clear. We had to prove infidelity, document it, and deliver it in a way that would hold up in court. Then, and only then, could I finally breathe, and maybe, finally, call Anabel without fear. That evening, I sat on the balcony, staring at the city lights reflecting on the glass like tiny stars. I imagined her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed at something simple. I wondered how much longer I could wait before the law released me from Melissa, before I could finally live for myself again. And in that quiet moment I realized something. I wasn't just angry. I was ready. Ready to reclaim my life, my house, my fortune, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at love with someone who made me feel alive again. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, heart hammering with a mix of dread and anticipation. I knew Melissa would leave for work soon, probably dressed in something carefully chosen to make her look innocent, unaware that her every step was under scrutiny. I double-checked my phone. Lucas had sent updates overnight, and my stomach tightened. The photos were convincing, yes, but I needed absolute, irrefutable proof for the lawyer. I started planning my days like a strategist on a battlefield. Every time I left the house, I pretended to be at work while Lucas monitored Melissa. Every movement, every phone call, every casual excuse was logged. I kept meticulous notes in a leather-bound notebook I carried everywhere, jotting down times, dates, and small anomalies. My friends thought I was obsessive, but I didn't care. This wasn't paranoia, it was survival. Meanwhile, Anabel's messages were the only relief from the stress. She sent photos of her twins, Sophie and Mia, holding up paintings they'd made. "Look what we did today!" One message read, followed by a picture of 2 tiny, paint-smeared hands. My chest warmed. She had no idea how much those small glimpses of her life were giving me strength. I wanted to call her, to ask her out right there on the balcony of her apartment, but the lawyer's warning echoed in my mind: if you act too soon, you risk everything. Then came the Thursday evening breakthrough. Lucas called me in a hushed tone, excitement barely restrained. "She's made a mistake." Apparently, Melissa had left her phone at home while running an errand. Something unusual for her. Lucas remotely accessed the cloud backups of her texts, legal under the detective's powers for private investigations, and found messages to the man in the photos. The texts were explicit, casual, and careless, arranging secret meetings, laughing about how she had me fooled, and confirming dates when she knew I'd be at work. Every word was a dagger. I felt a surge of vindication. Not happiness, not relief, just the raw, combustible power of truth in my hands. Finally, I could go to the lawyer with real evidence, not just suspicion. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria Kane, laid out the next steps in cold, professional detail. We filed for an annulment of the marriage contract immediately. Infidelity voids her rights. With the photos and texts, the court won't hesitate. As we worked late into the night preparing documents, my phone vibrated. A text from Anabel. "Hey, How was your day? My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to reply, I can finally breathe tonight because of you. But instead, I typed something safer. Long day. You. Her response came instantly. Busy with the girls. Can't wait for some quiet time this weekend. My chest tightened. That little phrase, quiet time, made me ache to be there with her, to talk, laugh, and forget the mess that was Melissa. The next morning, Lucas presented the final set of evidence, more photos, timestamps, and even a voice memo from Melissa laughing with the man in our bedroom. The plan was airtight. The detective emphasized something I didn't need to hear. If we present this exactly as it is, the judge will have no choice. She's done. I exhaled, feeling a surge of hope I hadn't allowed myself in months. I could finally take control of my life again, reclaim the fortune that was mine, and maybe, finally ask Anabel to be more than a stranger I'd met in a supermarket aisle. But before the court date, I had one more hurdle, keeping Melissa unaware of the impending storm. One slip, one casual text, one misstep, and she could cover her tracks or sabotage everything. Every day became a careful dance, polite smiles, feigned concern, nods of agreement when she flaunted her manipulation, all while plotting her legal downfall. By Friday, everything was in place. I reviewed the documents, studied every photograph, memorized every incriminating text. Lucas had coordinated with Victoria Kane so the presentation would be seamless. The pieces of my life, shattered for so long by Melissa's cruelty, were finally coming together. And all the while, Anabel's laughter lingered in my mind like a beacon. I didn't know if she would ever be mine, but for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope. That evening, I glanced at the clock, thinking, tomorrow, it all changes. Tomorrow, Melissa sees the consequences of her betrayal. Tomorrow, I might finally be free, and maybe, just maybe, I can begin the life I dreamed of with Anabel. The morning of the court hearing arrived like a thundercloud on the horizon. I woke before dawn, unable to sleep, every nerve on edge. The house felt different, hollow, tense, as if it too knew that today would be the day everything changed. Melissa had gotten up earlier than usual, humming a careless tune in the kitchen. I forced a smile as I poured my coffee, careful not to betray the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. Victoria Kane had warned me that Melissa might attempt theatrics in court. She could pretend to be the wronged wife, claim stress, emotional instability, or even accuse me of harassment. But I had Lucas, my army of evidence, and the law firmly on my side. Every photograph, every message, every moment of her betrayal was meticulously catalogued and time-stamped. This wasn't a guessing game, it was retribution with precision. When we entered the courtroom, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Melissa was already there, flanked by her lawyer, dressed immaculately in black, a mask of composure she had probably practiced in front of a mirror. Her eyes flicked to me once, scanning, calculating. I held her gaze for a long moment, unblinking, letting her know that this time, she had no control. Victoria began presenting the evidence. First, the photos, Melissa laughing, touching, whispering with the man in what had been our bedroom. Then the texts, explicit and careless, revealing meetings, plans, and her own admission of infidelity. Finally, the voice memo, a recording that perfectly captured her laughter, her casual disregard for the life she had helped destroy. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with an uncanny ability to see through deception, leaned forward. Her eyes never left the screen, absorbing each detail like a hawk sizing up prey. Melissa's lawyer tried to object, tried to argue context, intent, and interpretation. But Victoria anticipated every move, countering calmly, citing legal precedent, and walking the court through the timeline with clinical precision. Every piece of her defense crumbled like a sandcastle against the tide. I watched Melissa's composure falter, the mask slipping just enough to reveal a flash of panic. And then, the clincher, the annulment clause in our marriage contract. Victoria highlighted the exact wording: if a spouse cheats, they forfeit any claim to property or assets. She laid it out slowly, emphasizing each word, letting the room absorb the weight of its implications. Melissa's jaw went slack. I didn't need to feel vindicated. Her own face said it all. The judge finally spoke. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. Based on the evidence presented, the court finds that the marriage contract is null and void due to proven infidelity. The assets, including the house and $2 million, remain solely with the plaintiff. The court will issue a divorce decree effective immediately. A surreal silence fell over the courtroom. I felt a strange mix of relief, disbelief, and satisfaction wash over me. The nightmare that had haunted every waking hour was finally over. Melissa sat frozen, staring at nothing, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. I didn't linger. Once the decree was signed, I stepped out into the sunlight, breathing deeply as if the fresh air itself were a kind of liberation. And there, in the lobby of the courthouse, I pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over Anabel's number. The temptation to send a casual, text ward with the desire to approach her properly, to ask her out like a man who had earned a second chance. Finally, with a racing heart and a flicker of courage, I typed, "Can we meet for dinner tonight? There's something I need to celebrate, and someone I want to celebrate it with." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The wait for her reply felt like eternity. Then, almost immediately, "I'd love that. See you at 7? My chest tightened. This was it. A clean break from a toxic past, a hard-earned victory, and the first step toward a life I'd imagined but never dared to hope for. Tonight, it wasn't about revenge or loss. It was about possibility, laughter, and the chance to begin again with someone who truly mattered. By 6:30 p.m., I was pacing nervously in my apartment, staring at the reflection in the mirror as if it could give me some guidance. I had survived a storm, a marriage that had been nothing short of a nightmare, but asking Anabel out felt like navigating a different kind of battlefield. One where charm mattered, humor mattered, and every wrong word could send her running. I finally convinced myself to leave, straightening my jacket and gripping the car keys as though they were lifelines. Downtown traffic crawled, and every stoplight seemed designed to test my patience. The city lights reflected in the windshield, casting jagged shadows across my hands. My phone buzzed. Anabel's on her way. "Can't wait to see you." A small smile tugged at my lips, a warmth I hadn't felt in months. We met outside a quiet bistro tucked between a bookstore and a florist, a place Anabel had recommended. She stood there, holding her purse and wrangling the twins with one hand, a small but bright smile lighting her face. Her hair was loosely pinned back, the soft glow of streetlights catching golden highlights. She wore casual elegance, approachable yet undeniably captivating. My heart skipped a beat. "Hi," I said, words stumbling awkwardly out of my mouth. "Hi," she replied, her voice calm, warm, and somehow steadying. "I wasn't sure if you'd show up with all that divorce drama going on." I laughed, a little too loudly, and felt some tension ease. "I did. And now it's officially behind me. I owe you a proper celebration." Dinner was an exercise in awkward perfection. The twins alternated between charming giggles and whispered conspiracies, occasionally attempting to sneak bites of my bread roll when Anabel wasn't looking. I admired her patience, the way she managed them without losing her composure or humor. She shared small stories about the girls' school, their stubborn love of art projects, and the funny misadventures that came with raising twins alone. I told her cautiously about my work, my recent upheaval, and the toxic marriage I had finally escaped. I avoided the bitterness at first, letting the humor and absurdity of some situations come through instead. She listened intently, laughing at the right moments, her eyes always returning to mine. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel judged, cornered, or humiliated. I felt seen. At one point, the twins insisted on drawing me a "Welcome to the Single Life" picture, a colorful explosion of crayons and imagination. I held it up proudly, pretending it was priceless artwork. Anabel laughed, and I realized then that this was different. This wasn't just a connection built on shared sympathy or convenience. This was the kind of spark that made you hope, the kind that whispered that maybe life had a second act worth living. After dinner, we walked along the river walk. The evening was mild, and the lights shimmered on the water like scattered stars. We talked about books we loved, dreams we'd shelved for practicality, and the absurdity of life that seemed to collide in perfect timing. Finally, I asked, voice quiet but steady, "Would you like to do this again?" Anabel paused, looking at me and then the twins, and smiled. "I'd like that," she said simply. I felt a release, a weight lifting off my shoulders that had been there for years. That night, I went home with a sense of possibility I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. The nightmare with Melissa had ended, but more importantly, a new chapter was beginning, one filled with laughter, love, and a chance to finally build something real, something worth protecting. The following weeks were a mixture of excitement, discovery, and gentle chaos. Living in the aftermath of my divorce had been like stepping out of a dark tunnel into sunlight I wasn't sure I deserved. But with Anabel and her daughters, every day brought laughter and warmth that made me forget, if only for a moment, the bitterness and fear that had shadowed my life for so long. Anabel had a way of turning ordinary moments into something memorable. Breakfasts were filled with giggles, pancake flour on the counter, and twins insisting on narrating the most dramatic story of their day. Even the chaos became a kind of comfort. For the first time, I understood what it meant to be part of a real family, not one dictated by contracts, betrayal, or fear. I had finally learned how to let go, not just of Melissa, but of the constant anxiety that came from guarding everything I had earned. The divorce had been brutal, yes, and claiming my $2 million and house had been a relief, but it wasn't the money that mattered now. It was freedom. Freedom to choose love without strings, to wake up without dread, to live without constantly questioning who I could trust. Anabel and I began to explore the city together. Weekend trips became our ritual, farmers' markets, museums, parks, and long walks by the river. The twins loved our outings, and I discovered a surprising patience in myself, one I never knew existed. I was learning the joys of fatherly guidance, but on my terms, without coercion, fear, or obligation. One evening, as we sat on my back patio watching the sunset, Anabel rested her head on my shoulder. The twins were chasing fireflies nearby, laughter echoing in the warm evening air. I realized then that the life I had once feared I'd never get, the life filled with love, laughter, and trust, was finally mine. We talked about the future, about vacations, dreams of a small lakeside cabin someday, maybe a family dog, and quiet nights by the fire. I told her about the fear I had felt for so many years, the control Melissa had tried to impose, and how it had shaped me. Anabel held my hand tightly and whispered, "You're allowed to be happy now. You deserve this." Her words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had lived cautiously, bracing for betrayal or humiliation. Now I realized I could finally lean into life, fully and unapologetically. With Anabel by my side, I didn't have to hide, I didn't have to guard myself, I could just be. Months passed, and our relationship deepened naturally. Even the twins warmed to me fully, trusting me not just as Anabel's partner, but as someone who truly cared for them. We became a team, a little chaotic but perfectly ours. I had found love in the most unexpected place, and the lessons from the past no longer felt like scars, but like stepping stones towards something better. One night, after tucking the twins into bed, Anabel and I sat together on the couch, a quiet contentment settling between us. I reached for her hand. "I never thought I'd feel this alive again," I said softly. "You earned it," she replied, smiling. "We both did." And in that moment I knew she was right. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable, reclaimed my life, and finally discovered a love that was patient, honest, and real. The nightmare of my past no longer defined me, it had only led me to a life worth living. The house was no longer just mine. It was ours. A sanctuary built on trust, laughter, and the kind of love I had thought only existed in stories. And as I watched the city lights twinkle outside, I realized that the story I was living now, imperfect, messy, and full of joy, was the one I had always been waiting for. Months turned into a year, and the house, once a symbol of control and fear, had transformed into a home brimming with laughter, warmth, and the occasional chaos only children can bring. The twins had officially dubbed me Uncle Max, a title I wore with pride, secretly hoping one day it would become Dad, in the quieter corners of our life together. Anabel and I had fallen into a rhythm that felt effortless, yet extraordinary. I never imagined that a chance encounter in a supermarket could flip my entire world upside down, but here we were, proving that life sometimes delivers happiness in the most unpredictable packages. Even the scars from my past, the humiliation, the betrayal, the constant anxiety, had become lessons in resilience and discernment. I often found myself smiling at how absurd life could be. One afternoon, as the twins played by the pool, I remembered the ridiculous story I'd once read about someone releasing piranhas as a lesson in revenge. It made me chuckle, a reminder that sometimes, justice could be both dramatic and harmless, and that I had survived far worse with nothing but my wits, courage, and a bit of luck. The $2 million in the house, once sources of anxiety, now felt like a small bonus compared to the priceless gift of freedom and true companionship. Anabel and I didn't just share love, we shared respect, laughter, and a profound sense of trust that made every day feel like a victory over the past. At night, I would sometimes sit on the patio alone, watching the city lights glimmer against the dark sky, and think, life had tested me brutally, yet it had also shown me that the best things are often the ones you never see coming. And when Anabel joined me, her hand finding mine without a word, I realized that happiness isn't a prize won, it's a choice, nurtured carefully, fiercely, and with a heart brave enough to love again. I had once believed that my story was over the day betrayal struck, but in truth, it had only just begun, richer, brighter, and infinitely more human than I could have imagined.